It was recently announced that 2014 South Park The Stick of Truth will be getting re-released for current generation consoles, this being PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and that there would also be a physical version released. This makes now a good time to take a look back at the censorship controversy that affected the game back when it was first released, as well as a lesser known fact regarding the European release of the game. You may recall that most versions of The Stick of Truth released around the world had at least some form of censorship. A special German version, for instance, was created to get around German regulations regarding showing certain Nazi iconography, and this release censored all Nazi content out with things like black boxes. The obstructive approach of censoring things with black boxes seemed very much intended by the devs, and was a way for them to point towards and make fun of the censorship restrictions. The same approach was then carried forward to the Australian release, where the title also faced censorship restrictions. In Australia, the title was refused classification, effectively banning it for sale in the region. What prompted the Australian ban was what was described as sexual violence in regards to two minigames, one featuring an abortion being performed and the other involving anal probing. In substitute for these scenes, Australian players will instead see a crying koala bear with text mocking the censorship decision. However, that wasn't all for censorship made to The Stick of Truth. As well as Germany and Australia, the European version also faced changes, but unlike the German and Australian specific changes, these cuts were only made to the console versions and not the PC release. Similar to the Australian release, Europe will see a comedic image instead of the mentioned scenes, with text mocking the decision. However, instead of a crying koala bear, it is a facepalming statue of David. These changes were also made to the German console release alongside the Nazi changes. Why was this decision made though? Were the offending scenes not allowed by the PEGI rating system? And why was it okay to show these scenes on PC and not consoles? The website The Guardian did an in-depth investigation into these points and discovered that despite the text mentioning being forced into censorship, this was actually completely not true. The Guardian contacted PEGI and was told that PEGI rated the uncensored version of the game with an 18 rating, then also the censored version of the game with an 18 rating. There was absolutely no need for these cuts, and they have no idea why Ubisoft decided to censor the game. To quote, "The game was assessed by us and deemed acceptable for a PEGI 18 rating. For some games released in the UK, we are obliged to consider UK legislation as the Video Recordings Act 2010 currently affects video games. This consideration applies to games that are likely to attain a PEGI 12, 16 or 18 rating and which may contain potentially harmful or illegal material. As there was no such issue with the game, it was duly given its PEGI 18 uncut." Let me emphasize that we did not censor or edit the game in any shape or form. Sometime later, the publisher made a decision to make alterations to the game, which meant it had to be resubmitted to us as a different version. We are not privy to reasons why the game was edited and cannot therefore give you any other details. This version was subsequently rated 18 uncut also. From this, we can see that there was no need for the European changes to South Park The Stick of Truth. Ubisoft has explained why they removed these scenes though, and they said that this was a market decision made by Ubisoft EMEA. From this and what PEGI said about the cuts, it is clear that this was not an act of censorship, but a marketing decision. Perhaps designed to raise publicity for the game, and perhaps to draw attention towards the real censorship that the game faced over in Australia and Germany. This is also why the European PC release is completely uncut. On consoles, the only release so far to be fully uncensored is the American release. However, considering the true reason behind the European changes, this means it may be possible for the upcoming PS4 and Xbox One releases to be uncensored as well. It's not currently known whether this will be the case, but Censored Gaming has contacted Ubisoft about this. I'll be sure to update you when this is known. South Park The Stick of Truth will be releasing February 13th for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Until next time, thank you for watching.